The wedding ended the way weddings always do, with tired smiles, half-empty glasses, and music that lingered long after people stopped dancing. I remember standing near the door, holding my coat, watching my son laugh with his new wife. He looked lighter that night, free, like whatever weight he'd been carrying had finally loosened its grip. That was the last time I saw him. At first, his absence felt ordinary. Newlyweds disappear for a while. They travel, they unplug. I told myself not to hover, not to be that parent who mistakes silence for danger. 3 days passed, then a week. I sent a message. Nothing. I called, straight to voicemail. By the second week, the quiet began to feel wrong. My son was never unreachable, not with me. Even when he was busy, even when life pulled him in different directions, he always checked in. A short text, a missed call returned, something. This time, there was nothing. Just a ringing phone and a growing ache in my chest I couldn't explain. His wife said he needed space. That was her exact phrase. He needed space. I remember how calmly she said it. Too calmly, like she had practiced the sentence before letting it out. She smiled when she said it too, a small smile, polite, empty. I wanted to believe her, but a mother knows when a silence is heavier than it should be. At night, I replayed the wedding in my mind, the way he hugged me a little longer than usual, the way he whispered, "I'll call you soon," the way his eyes flickered toward the door when no one else was looking, as if he already knew something none of us did. When I went to his apartment, his suitcase was still there, his winter coat still hung behind the door, his shoes were lined up neatly, untouched. People don't leave without their shoes. The police told me to wait. Adults disappear all the time, they said. Sometimes they just want a new life. But I knew my son. He wouldn't vanish without a word. He wouldn't erase himself from the world I helped build for him. Weeks turned into months, summer came and went, and then winter returned. The cold that year felt sharper somehow, like it carried memory, like it was trying to tell me something buried beneath the ground, beneath the lies, beneath the polite explanations everyone kept offering. One morning, as snow pressed against my windows, I realized the truth I'd been avoiding. My son didn't leave, and whatever took him began on the night he said "I do." I just didn't know yet how deep the ground had been disturbed, or how close the truth was to finally breaking through the ice. The first snowstorm of December arrived without warning. It buried the streets, the trees, the familiar corners of the city in a silence so thick it felt intentional. I stood by the window watching snow swallow everything I thought I understood about my life. That was the morning I decided to stop waiting. I went back to the police station, this time with a folder. Phone records, printed messages, dates circled in red. I spoke slowly, carefully, the way you do when you know you're asking people to care more than they want to. They listened, nodded, wrote notes, and still nothing moved. "He's an adult," one officer said gently. "We can't force him to come back." I didn't ask them to bring him back. I asked them to look. So I started looking on my own. I spoke to his friends first. Most of them hadn't heard from him since the wedding either. A few admitted something felt off that night. He drank less than usual, stepped outside more than once, took a phone call he didn't want anyone to hear. No one knew who called him. Then I spoke to his wife again. She had already changed the apartment. New curtains, rearranged furniture. His photos were gone from the walls, not packed away, gone. She said he didn't want reminders. Her voice didn't shake, her hands didn't fidget, but she avoided my eyes. I asked her about the call. She froze for half a second, just enough. She said, "He gets calls all the time, work stuff." My son didn't take work calls during his own wedding. That night, I searched through his old things stored at my house. Boxes I hadn't opened in years, college notebooks, childhood drawings, a winter scarf I knitted when he was 16. And then I found the journal. I recognized his handwriting immediately, tight, careful, like he didn't want the words escaping the page. The last entry was dated 2 days before the wedding. It read, "I feel like I'm running out of time. There are things I can't say out loud. If something happens, I need someone to look where it's cold." I read that sentence over and over, where it's cold. I remembered the property his wife's family owned outside the city, an old piece of land no one talked about much, abandoned after a fire years ago. They used it sometimes in winter, she once told me, for quiet, for privacy. The police said I was reaching. Grief makes people imagine patterns, they said, but grief also sharpens instincts you spent a lifetime building. When I drove past that land for the first time, snow covered everything. A flat, untouched white stretching farther than I could see. No footprints, no tracks, just stillness. And in that stillness, I felt something watching me back. I didn't know what was hidden beneath the snow, but I knew one thing with terrifying certainty. Winter hadn't returned by accident. I waited 3 days before going back. Long enough for doubt to creep in, long enough for logic to whisper that I was chasing shadows, that grief was rewriting my thoughts. I almost believed it. Almost. On the 4th morning, I drove out before sunrise. The road was empty, frozen, stretching ahead like a question no one wanted answered. The land looked even lifeless in the early light. No smoke from chimneys, no sound of birds, just snow and silence. I parked near the fence and stepped out. The cold cut through my boots instantly. Each breath burned my lungs. I told myself I was only there to look, just to quiet my mind, but my body moved with purpose, like it already knew where to go. Near the tree line, the snow looked different, not disturbed exactly, just uneven, as if the ground beneath it had settled after being forced to accept something it didn't want. I knelt down and pressed my gloved hand against the surface. It felt harder there, compacted, older. My heart began to pound. I backed away, suddenly afraid of what my hands might uncover if I stayed any longer. Fear is strange that way. It doesn't always come before the truth. Sometimes it comes because the truth is already standing in front of you. That's when I heard footsteps. I turned, breath caught in my throat. It was her. My son's wife stood a few yards away, wrapped in a long coat, her hair pulled back tight. She looked almost annoyed, like I had shown up uninvited to a place she thought she owned. "I thought you might come back," she said. There was no surprise in her voice. I asked her what she was doing there. "This is family land. You shouldn't be here." I wanted to scream. Instead, I asked the question that had been rotting inside me for months. Where is my son? For the first time, her composure cracked, just slightly. Her eyes flicked toward the trees, toward the uneven snow. "He made choices," she said quietly. "Not everyone gets to live with theirs." I stepped closer. The air between us felt heavy, charged. "He was scared," I said. "He wrote it down. He knew something was coming." Her jaw tightened. "You should go home before you hurt yourself digging where you don't belong." That word again. Digging. She walked past me without another glance, her boots leaving clear prints behind her, prints that led away from the disturbed snow, away from the truth. I stood there long after she disappeared, the cold seeping into my bones, the meaning of her words settling in my chest. That night, I called the police again. This time, I didn't ask them to look. I told them exactly where to gig. And as the snow began to fall once more, I realized something terrifying. Whatever was buried out there had been waiting for winter to return. They didn't want to come at first. Jurisdiction questions, property ownership, weather conditions, Every excuse sounded reasonable on paper. None of them sounded reasonable to a mother who hadn't heard her son's voice in almost a year. What finally moved them wasn't my fear. It was the journal. The line about the cold, the timing, the way his phone last pinged near that land before going silent forever. Facts have weight. Enough of them can break ice. They arrived 2 days later. By then, the temperature had dropped again, the kind of cold that slows your thoughts and sharpens your senses. I stood behind the yellow tape, my hands shaking inside my pockets, watching men with shovels walk toward the tree line. Every scrape of metal against frozen ground sounded too loud, too final. I kept my eyes on the spot I remembered, the uneven snow, the place my body recognized before my mind dared to think. They worked slowly, carefully, as if the earth itself deserved respect. After 20 minutes, one of them stopped. He raised his hand. Everything else stopped too. No wind, no voices, just breath hanging in the air. They switched tools, smaller ones, gentler ones. That's when I knew this wasn't imagination anymore. You don't get careful unless there's something worth protecting. A boot appeared first. Black, leather, familiar. My knees buckled and someone grabbed my arm before I hit the ground. I don't remember screaming, but I remember the sound that came out of me didn't feel human. It felt ancient, like something torn straight from the center of my chest. They uncovered him slowly, too slowly. My son lay there as if winter had been trying to preserve him. His coat zipped up, his scarf still wrapped around his neck, the one I knitted years ago. The red had faded, but I recognized every stitch. There were no signs of struggle, no chaos, just stillness. That was the strangest part. People expect violence to look violent, but sometimes the worst acts are quiet, clean, planned. The police pulled me back as they continued working. I heard words float past me: time of death, blunt force, prior relationship. Prior relationship. They didn't have to say her name. She was arrested that evening. The story came together faster than I expected, faster than I wanted. An argument after the wedding, secrets my son planned to reveal, a life insurance policy changed weeks before the ceremony, a moment of panic disguised as control. She said it was an accident. They always do. At the station, she asked to see me. I almost said no. Almost. She looked smaller in the interrogation room, not fragile, just emptied out, like whatever fire once drove her had finally burned itself away. He was going to leave, she said. I couldn't let everything fall apart. I stared at her and realized something chilling. She didn't regret what she did. She regretted being discovered. When I left that room, snow had started falling again. Soft, steady, covering footprints, covering roads, pretending nothing had happened. But winter doesn't erase the truth, it reveals it. And even as justice began its first steps, I knew this wasn't the end of what the cold was about to uncover. The funeral was held on a morning so quiet it felt rehearsed. Snow fell in thin, patient lines, as if the sky itself was lowering its voice out of respect. People came, family, friends, even strangers who'd read about the case and felt close to it without knowing why. Tragedy has a way of pulling people together, even when they don't understand what they're mourning. I stood beside the grave, listening to the sound of earth meeting wood. Each thud felt like punctuation, a sentence ending too soon. They told me time would dull the pain, that justice would help, that answers would bring peace. I nodded when they said these things. I thanked them, but inside I knew something was unfinished, because answers don't always explain everything. Some nights I still woke up thinking I heard his footsteps. Some mornings I reached for my phone before remembering there would be no message waiting for me. Grief doesn't arrive all at once. It leaks into you slowly until you're carrying it everywhere without realizing how heavy you've become. The trial moved forward. Details emerged I wish I'd never known. How long she planned it, how calm she was afterward, how she returned to the reception alone and told people my son wasn't feeling well, and how no one questioned it. The most painful truth wasn't what she did, it was how easy it was for the world to accept his disappearance. One afternoon, weeks after the burial, a detective came by my house. He looked uncomfortable, like someone carrying news that refused to stay hidden. They had found something else, on the same land, buried farther back near the old fire ruins. It wasn't a body, it was evidence. Personal items, documents, a second phone, messages my son never sent, plans to meet a lawyer, notes about exposing financial fraud tied to her family's property. The land wasn't just abandoned, it was hiding something. My son hadn't been running away from his marriage, he had been running towards the truth, and that truth threatened more than just one person. The investigation widened. Names I recognized from polite dinners and holiday gatherings were suddenly spoken in courtrooms. Deals were unraveled. Reputations collapsed quietly, the way they often do when no one's watching closely enough. Through it all, winter stayed, longer than usual that year. People joked about it, said the cold refused to leave, but I understood something they didn't. Some winters linger because they have work left to do. One evening, as I stood outside my house, watching snow gather along the fence, I realized justice doesn't always arrive loudly. Sometimes it comes in small, relentless steps. A document found, a lie exposed, a truth refusing to stay buried. I went back inside and sat with my son's journal one last time. There was a sentence near the end I hadn't paid attention to before. If this comes out, don't let it stop there. I closed the book, my hands steady for the first time in months, because winter wasn't finished telling its story yet, and neither was I. After the arrests widened, the town changed its tone. People spoke softer around me, eyes lingered a second too long before looking away. The same neighbors who once asked how my son was doing now avoided saying his name, as if it might summon something they weren't ready to face. I understood why. The truth has a way of making ordinary places feel haunted. Court dates stacked up like falling dominoes. One confession led to another silence. One document led to a resignation. The land outside the city was no longer just land. It became a map of choices people thought would stay hidden forever. Through it all, I stayed quiet. Grief teaches you restraint. You learn when words are useless, when presence is louder than protest. I sat through hearings, listened to lawyers turn my son's life into timelines and exhibits, and reminded myself to breathe when they said his name like it was just another detail. At home, winter pressed against the windows again. One evening, I noticed something I hadn't before. The scarf, the one he wore when they found him, it had been returned to me after the evidence review, sealed and clean. I hadn't touched it since. I wrapped it around my hands. It still smelled faintly like him. That's when I realized something important. He hadn't gone to that land unprepared. He'd dressed for the cold. He'd planned to come back. Which meant he'd trusted someone enough to meet them there. That someone had been his wife. But not alone. Phone records finally confirmed what I had suspected but couldn't prove. She hadn't acted in isolation. She called her brother that night, then her father. Short calls, efficient, timed perfectly between the wedding's end and my son's last signal. Family loyalty can be a powerful thing. So can fear. Deals were offered, testimonies negotiated, blame carefully distributed like weights meant to keep certain names from sinking too deep. The system worked the way systems often do, slowly, imperfectly. Still, it worked. One by one, the lies collapsed under their own weight. The day her sentencing was announced, snow fell again, thick and heavy, like the sky had been holding it back just for that moment. I sat in the back of the courtroom, hands folded, listening as the judge spoke words meant to sound final. She never looked at me. Not once. When it was over, reporters gathered outside. Questions flew. Microphones hovered inches from my face, waiting for something dramatic, something sharp. I gave them nothing. Justice doesn't need performance. That night, alone in my house, I opened the window and let the cold air rush in. It filled the room, biting and clean. For the first time, it didn't feel like a warning. It felt like release. But as I stood there watching snow drift into the darkness, I understood something else too. Winter hadn't just revealed what was buried in the ground. It had revealed who was willing to bury the truth and who never stopped fighting to uncover it. Spring tried to arrive that year, but winter refused to let go easily. Snow melted during the day, then froze again at night, leaving the ground cracked and uneven. That's what grief does too. It loosens, then tightens, over and over, until you learn how to walk carefully across it. Life slowly returned to a shape that resembled normal. I returned to routines, grocery stores, morning walks, conversations that didn't end in silence, but everything carried a thin layer of before and after. People asked if I was healing. I never knew how to answer that. One afternoon, I received a letter from the prison. Her handwriting was neat, controlled, familiar in a way that made my stomach turn. She wrote that she was sorry. She wrote that fear had guided her choices, that love had twisted into something unrecognizable, that she hoped one day I would forgive her. I folded the letter and placed it back in the envelope. Forgiveness is not a gift you can demand, and it's not always the same thing as peace. Instead, I drove out to the land one last time. The snow had finally thinned. Patches of dark earth showed through, raw and honest. The tree lines did exactly where it always had, unmoved by everything it had witnessed. I stood where they found him. There was no marker, no sign, just ground returning to itself. I didn't cry. I thanked him for trying to do the right thing, for leaving clues when he knew his voice might be taken from him, for trusting that someone would look where it was cold. As I turned to leave, I noticed something I hadn't before. Small flowers pushing through the melting snow. Fragile, stubborn, alive. Justice doesn't undo loss, but it does allow life to continue without lies poisoning the soil. That summer, I spoke publicly for the first time, not about grief, but about listening, about believing quiet warnings, about paying attention when someone's silence feels heavier than it should. People wrote to me afterward, strangers, parents, sons and daughters who said they saw themselves in the story, who promised to check in, to ask harder questions, to not ignore discomfort just because it's inconvenient. That mattered more than any verdict. One evening, as the sun set later than it had in years, I sat on my porch and felt something unexpected. Calm. Not happiness, not closure, but the absence of fear. Winter had taken my sun, but it had also given me truth. And as the seasons finally began to move forward again, I understood something else too. Some stories don't end when justice is served. They end when the truth refuses to stay buried any longer. The first winter without him ended quietly. No announcements, no sudden relief. Just a morning when I realized the cold didn't feel like an enemy anymore. It was still there, still sharp, but it no longer carried fear with it. I learned how to live with absence, not by filling it, but by respecting it. Some days I still reach for my phone before remembering there will be no message. Some nights I still listen for footsteps that will never cross the hallway again. Grief doesn't disappear. It changes shape. It becomes something you walk beside instead of something that drags you under. People ask me how I survived it. I tell them the truth. I didn't survive because I was strong. I survived because I refused to stop looking. Looking at what felt wrong, looking past polite answers, looking into the quiet places where truth hides when it knows it's not welcome.
My son believed the truth mattered, enough to risk everything, enough to leave clues when he knew his voice might be taken from him, enough to trust that someone would listen. I carry that belief now, in the way I speak, in the way I pay attention, in the way I refuse to accept silence as comfort when it feels too heavy to be innocent. The land has changed. Grass grows where snow once buried secrets. Children pass by without knowing what the ground remembers. Life moves forward the way it always does, indifferent and unstoppable. But I know. Winter remembers. It remembers what was taken, what was hidden, what was revealed when the world slowed down enough to notice. Sometimes, late at night, when the house is quiet and the air turns cold, I sit by the window and let the stillness speak. I don't ask questions anymore. I listen, because silence isn't always empty. Sometimes it's full of answers we're afraid to hear. My son disappeared after a wedding, but he returned with the truth. And as long as I breathe, as long as seasons continue to change forward, I will carry his story forward, not as a tragedy, but as a reminder that love notices, that truth waits, and that winter, no matter how cold or how long it stays, always reveals what was buried.